Hello, this is Digital Accessibility, the people behind the progress. I'm Joe Walensky, the creator and host of this series. And as an accessibility professional myself, I find it very interesting as to how others have found their way into this profession. So let's meet one of those people right now and hear about their journey. All right, well, it's time to get started with another episode of this podcast where I get the chance to meet an accessibility practitioner. And today I am pleased to be visiting with Christopher Land. Hello, Chris. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you, Joe?
It's going pretty well. It's a fairly dry day here in my Vashon Island office, which is near Seattle, where Blink has its headquarters. Where are you located?
I'm in San Diego, and it's another lovely day. I moved out here from the Midwest a few years ago, and I'm still appreciating the lovely spring-like weather we get in November here.
Well, it's great to get in touch with you again. We had met at the San Diego Accessibility and Inclusive Design Meetup group there. So looking forward to being at another one of those meetings again in the future.
Yeah, we'd love to have you come in and do a lightning talk for us sometime soon.
Well, a good place to start is always with what you're doing right now. So maybe tell us a little bit about your current position, and then we can go back and look at how you got there.
Yeah, sounds great. So let's see. I think I might have just started my 4th month at Oracle. And my title is long. I'm a senior accessibility technical program manager with Oracle, and I'm focusing on teams that work on all of Oracle's public-facing sites, and there's a lot. This includes Java, NetSuite, MySQL, and then within Oracle.com, we've got. I'm still getting an inventory of all the portals and front-end facing sites. So I'm working with teams sort of in the short term to find and fix issues that we have on our sites and make them as accessible as possible and get that moving forward. But also in the longer term, I'm working on building a program, building training targeted at UX folks, developers, and QA. Because I've kind of got, I've got this bottleneck problem where there's a lot of sites and I'm just one person. So I'm trying to do some formal training. I'm trying to do some on-the-job training where I'm supporting developers in fixing issues, helping designers review their drafts for potential issues and sort of fix things as upstream as possible. And we're working right now on formulating a system to start doing like accessibility annotations in our designs and really get the UX folks thinking through that accessibility problem solving. So, they're doing a fantastic job right now with visual design for our products and services. So we're doing a lot of exercises in like, okay, now that you've designed this cool thing, how are we going to do it with a keyboard? And put yourself in the shoes of a screen reader user. How are we going to make sure all the announcements are clear and everything is conveyed to all users? So yeah, it's a really great role. I'm really enjoying it because I'm getting that variety of working with designers, working with developers, and getting my hands into the code, and also using my experience with larger organizations, trying to tackle the big job of how do you get a large organization to start doing more and more accessibility and make that part of our jobs and the culture. So it's going great so far, and I'm really happy.
Well, you obviously have a lot of things that keep you busy, and we could come back and there are a couple of things you mentioned there I want to follow up on. But one of the things that I like to do with this series is to just follow the paths of people of how they got to where they are in accessibility. For people that are new to the discipline, sometimes it may not seem like an area that would be one of full-time activities. So why don't you just give us an idea of where accessibility first became of interest to you, and we can kind of move forward in time.
Yeah, sure. Sounds good, Joe. So let's see. My background, I guess I started my career doing graphic design, and this is now over 20 years ago. And so I was there and participating in sort of the start of businesses making websites. We're talking about early 2000s. So I went from graphic design into learning more HTML and CSS and JavaScript, and I did a lot of work for a good decade or so building websites. And at this point, I was really in the dark on accessibility. I did a lot of work in Flash, and I'm sure unleashed a lot of inaccessible experiences on the world in my early career, in my ignorance. Sorry about that. From there, I went and took a job as a front-end developer and designer with University of Michigan. And that was a great job. Got to work on a lot of really cool projects within the university. And that's where I first got introduced to accessibility. That's where I started getting projects, and the specs included not a whole lot of detail, but build this website, make it do this and that. Also, asterisk, make sure everything is accessible. And when I started asking follow-up questions of, what does that mean? I've heard about alt attributes, but never in my training or studies up to that had I really encountered accessibility very much. But the university, being publicly funded, was committed to accessibility for internal and external websites, because of its involvement with federal funding and that stuff. So that sort of was the start of my accessibility journey, as they say. I had to go out and basically start teaching myself. And I found very quickly that unlike vanilla, say JavaScript or HTML, Google is your best friend, or Stack Overflow is your best friend. You can say, how do I make a column do this? And it's pretty good about getting the reply back to you with some good leads to go down. I found this was not true with accessibility. There are a lot of resources out there that are either out of date or inaccurate. So I learned very early on that even when you find code samples and resources that say they're accessible, you have to start testing them thoroughly yourself. So that's where I got into learning to test with a screen reader and use that, and understanding the importance of keyboard navigation and some of the basics. Once I had started down this path at the university, it didn't take long before I got that reputation as, the accessibility guy. And so that kind of snowballed. They said, Chris knows how to make accessible tooltips. He knows how to do accordions. So all of the accessibility related work and bugs started coming my way, which was cool. So at first, and I use this when I'm teaching people that are new, to be very honest, at first I was kind of grumpy about the extra work. I didn't understand the importance of accessibility, and I didn't really have coworkers or people in my life with disabilities. So I was really underestimating the impact and importance of it, right? But once I started down this path, I started going to accessibility conferences, talking with daily native screen reader users, and really starting to see the issue and build my own personal empathy for users' struggles, and also how important and empowering it is for people when the technology works right. People can really live independent lives with a variety of disabilities in an unprecedented way. Just a quick example is somebody without sight can, as long as Uber and Lyft work, they can taxi all around a city independently, for example. So anyway, from there, I just kept building that expertise. I helped write some accessibility guidelines for the university and started disseminating accessibility information. And I'd had some other background in teaching animation and programming at the local college, so I really like working with people and teaching and stuff like that. So once I built this sort of specialty and started going down this path, I really got into it because it's it's creative, it's technical, it's problem solving, it involves design and UX, but man, it also just feels really good. It's more than just selling a product or building a website when you're really helping connect people and serving principles of equity and justice. That might be getting a little grand, but anyway, I sleep pretty well at night usually. So from there, I got a job doing accessibility development work and consulting with DQ, and worked with a lot of great people there. Learned a lot more as far as technical stuff like ARIA code and patterns, complex stuff like how you make a date picker accessible, for example. So it was really cool. It was a really great experience to work alongside a great group of experts. And so from there, I went to Level Access, continued on the same kind of path. I was a manager at Level Access and worked with a team of really talented senior consultants. We worked for a lot of great big brands. And yeah, that was really great. Did a lot of training at both jobs, worked with a lot of clients. And that's really rewarding too, when you get done with a training session and you can see people charged up and enthusiastic and have had their eyes open to the importance of accessibility. So yeah, that's sort of the short version, or maybe the long version.
Yeah, well, for those that may be new to the space and aren't familiar with DQ and Level Access, those are both organizations that specialize in assisting companies with their accessibility work. So I assume that, or I shouldn't assume that there was a lot different as you moved from that initial university work, where essentially you're working within that one domain for that organization, and then now you're doing consulting work for all kinds of different companies. What was that like? How did it, was it easy to make that move? And just tell me a little bit maybe about that experience.
Yeah, let's see. It was definitely a culture change. I was a little bit frustrated when I was at the university, just with the sort of slow speed that things got done. Yeah, and I don't want to be too critical, but everything took a really long time. And I basically heard about an opportunity, and I thought it would be a good growth opportunity to further specialize in accessibility. So the change is, I mean, at DQ and Level Access, the pace is faster. Everybody needs things done yesterday. Everybody needs their testing results next week. Everybody needs support. So there are times at both places where it could get overwhelming. But if you have the right amount of work, you can juggle working with a handful of clients, and the variety is really cool. Worked with I won't drop names, but some really great, big, prominent global brands, and worked with a great variety of teams at different companies. And every once in a while, you get a client that's sort of like, oh, I'm grumpy that I have to work with you, but we had this lawsuit. But I would say 90% of the clients were like a pleasure to work with. And like I said, a really big advantage at working at both firms is having a team of 100 plus talented, creative, experienced accessibility consultants. So in the real world, as you know, Joe, you run into a wide variety of accessibility challenges, things like Wow, that's a new UI element you've dreamed up. How the heck are we going to make that accessible? So really nice to be able to have a team of people in a Slack channel or email to say, oh, geez, look at this URL. I'm trying to figure out, should we do it like this, or this? And get really thoughtful, intelligent responses from people. That was really helpful in building whatever expertise I have now.
And now you're back within one organization, albeit extremely large one, one of the biggest digital companies in the world. So, how is it set up there? I know it's in large companies; it can be done in different ways. Sometimes there's accessibility group that supports across the entire enterprise. In other situations, individual groups have to find their way and claw for resources. How is it set up at Oracle?
Yeah, it's growing at Oracle. I think even globally, more and more companies are becoming aware of the need for accessibility. More and more large companies are building and growing their own internal teams because they're coming to the realization, hey, this isn't something I can just work with a consultant on for 3 months and then it goes away. This is it's a chunk of specialized knowledge that we need to spread, through all the UX, QA, dev folks. We need executives and product owners to understand the need. So a big part of it is culture change. So what I'm trying to do at Oracle is keep my consultant hat on, really, and sort of treat the teams I work with, basically do the same role that I've been doing for the past 6 or so years, and working with teams, finding out where their strengths are, where their weaknesses are, focusing on that. And my strategy that I've sort of come up with over the years, this isn't new or unique to me, but how to gradually work accessibility in. There's a lot to it. And if you go to teams that are already sort of stretched thin and working to capacity, and you say, okay, from now on, you have to test these 50 checkpoints, it can be a lot. So I'm in the process now of working on building out a program where we're going to start with, hey, let's start these 10 checkpoints. Let's understand what the user impact is and why we're doing them. Let's just focus on that for this month or this quarter. And then once that becomes part of our workflow, let's look at the next 10 things. So again, trying to be sensitive to people's organizational psychology, if you will, to work in accessibility, let people know it's meaningful and connect with the work, and try to build it gradually over time. So back to your other point, Oracle does have a main accessibility program office, and they're a great group of folks. They serve and consult for all of Oracle's products. And so my role is I work closely with them, but I'm part of technically I report through the marketing organization. So it's really nice to be able to just focus on a smaller section of all the Oracle properties, which is all our public facing sites. So I call myself sort of the accessibility person for the front of the house. But I work closely and sometimes support developers on our products and help people figure out challenging UI riddles and how to make them accessible.
I think I heard you mention that you developed training, as part of your career. I can't remember if you said you were doing that at Oracle, but are there training programs available for people to, kind of formally learn about accessibility within your organization?
Yeah, we've got so Oracle has an accessibility conference once a year, and we do training for different teams in an ad hoc basis, and we record those sessions and post those for others to review. So I'm focusing on sort of adding to that collective training. Right now, I've done some sessions on sort of intro to accessibility, sort of 101 material for people that are new. Again, really trying to drive the human first, person first. Here's what our different user groups look like. Here's what assistive technology is, and it's really eye-opening to people that have not been exposed to it before. I'm just in the middle now of planning out and designing some sessions for our UX teams. And so focusing on the subset of accessibility stuff that designers most need to be concerned about, color, page structure. I just did a session yesterday on interaction design. So a lot of interactive conversation about here's what a screen reader sounds like when the page is working well. Notice the great semantic information we're getting. Notice that every time there's a visual change on the page, we also hear something in the screen reader. And, also getting users used to, or people used to putting their mouse to the side. And can you do all the things with keyboard only? And again, trying to stimulate that UX problem solving. Again, most UX and developers too, once they've understand the purpose or in the right mindset, accessibility thinking is, it's problem solving. It's doing what people presumably like to do in those rules already. It's just sort of extending the thought process to, cover more people and understand some more technical details.
Well, one of the things I always like to, ask about is, thoughts about, the future. If you maybe comment on, maybe where you see certain things going as we move forward as accessibility professionals, maybe areas that, you see as gaps that need to be filled in, or possibly, projects you can talk about that you're currently passionate about. I know when I look back on my career in accessibility, in a lot of ways, things are amazing compared to how they were 20 years ago. And then other ways, I'm like, wow, I really thought we'd be farther along than this at this point. So I kind of threw a lot of things out there, but just kind of looking ahead, are there any areas you might want to comment on?
Let's see. That's a pretty broad question, Joe.
Or just pick one spot in there.
Yeah. Well, let's see. I mean, I'm optimistic about the future of accessibility and the trajectory we're on. I hear more and more having people with disabilities included in the social movements for diversity and inclusion and equity. And so I think that's great. I like to say, when I first got into accessibility, I would go to a party and talk to somebody and they'd ask what I do. And I'd say accessibility and they'd have no idea what it was. Now, more and more in that same experience, people know more. So it's becoming more mainstream. So I like here in San Diego, I like to go to say meetup groups for UX, meetup groups for developers, and more of these people know what accessibility is and they're interested. And in these conversations, they'll say, oh, I know a little bit about that. Hey, I have this question. So I have some fun conversations around that. I mean, as far as where the future's going for accessibility, that's tricky. One thing I guess I can comment on, I just got back from the Accessing Higher Ground conference and did a talk there on artificial intelligence and accessibility. And that's a fun talk. I got that accepted for CSUN this March and hope to go and deliver it again there. But it's a fun talk because there's essentially two parts. One is the positive, all the great things AI has done to help people with disabilities. And we're talking about speech recognition, voice control, the ability for AI to scan photos and video content and provide intelligent descriptions. There's cool developments in possibilities for like robots to be able to help folks, but there's also problems with increased discrimination if AI tools are not deployed carefully. Not sure if you've caught this sort of piece of news yet, but more and more companies are using AI in hiring processes and interviewing processes for things like college or new jobs. And there are cases now where a resume might get screened out, or even somebody's video interview might be analyzed by AI. And so there are some problems that if we're not designing AI inclusively, it can end up having bias involved. So, for example, there are video AIs now helping people with, say, like an interview like this. If we had an AI running, you could literally have a tool that would analyze your and my emotional responses and eye contact, that kind of thing. We don't necessarily know how all those things work behind the scenes because they're all owned by private companies and the code base is protected, right? But imagine if you have an AI that is judging our eye contact and using that to influence, say, an employability score. Well, if somebody has a facial difference or somebody is non-sighted and they're not making eye contact, they might get screened out of the hiring process before they're even considered by a human. So that's just sort of a taste, but I try to highlight the high points of accessibility in AI, but also point out the dangers that we need to be vigilant about.
Well, yeah, well, first of all, I'm really glad you mentioned the two conferences, and those be good things to include in the show notes for people to be aware of that. And then this issue that you just brought up is a really interesting one that I hadn't heard about in that way, and as it relates to accessibility. So I definitely want to look into that further. I guess one of the things with AI is it could also become a positive influence where it could eliminate bias that exists for people with disabilities as they present themselves. So yeah, thanks for contributing that.
Yeah, definitely. There is a lot of good potential there, and the thing to sort of differentiate is the bias or the danger happens. It's just like web accessibility. If people don't know that they need to make sure to build this in, they're going to accidentally make inaccessible websites. The same applies for AI. If you just let the robots scan the data and come up with algorithms on their own, there's a high chance for bias. But like you said, if we're conscientious and inclusive about it, we can use these tools to help screen out bias and hopefully make things more equitable. But it's something that has to be on the radar all the time, or things are going to slip into that negative direction.
Well, hopefully we'll end up in the positive ways you mentioned, looking on the optimistic view. But thanks for taking the time here to share a little bit about your own journey and things going on in your work. And hopefully I'll see you at another event in San Diego again sometime soon.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thanks, Joe.